Well, hello from Murrayfield. Well, the shot at history is still on. Ireland are 2 wins from 2 after their 32 points to 18 win over Scotland here. Rory O'Connor and Cian Tracey are here with me at Murrayfield. But first, a reminder that rugby coverage on Indo Sport is brought to you by Energia, who sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels. Energia's Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion and welcomes all abilities to participate. For more on their rugby partnerships and exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, visit energia.ie/rugby. Well, lads, what an afternoon we've just witnessed here.
Yeah, really impressive Ireland win. Like a dangerous fixture from the outset, but they turned up and performed from pretty much minute one. Scotland didn't. You know, they didn't talk much during the week, Scotland, but you imagine behind the scenes the fact that they'd lost this fixture 10 times in a row, they'd never won it under Greater Townsend, had to be a factor in their preparation, and you kind of feel like at some stage they're going to say no more and deliver something in this game. But today it wasn't that day. They were incredibly disappointing. They were bullied up front by an Irish pack that was really on it. And then they were dominated in the air, they were dominated in the territory stakes. When they had the ball, they were running it down blind alleys, they were being picked off in the breakdown, they were out scrummaged. Line out didn't go great for Ireland, but with Sam Prendergast pulling the strings and in arguably his most impressive performance for Ireland so far, I wouldn't say it was the complete display, because there was bits that they'll want to get better at, and there was obviously that period around half time where they let them back into the game. But if you think about November and you think about the way they started last week, it's an improvement in my opinion on that. It's 2 steps of 3 in a Triple Crown, it's 2 steps of 5 and a Grand Slam bid. It's a back-to-back bonus points. It's a good day at the office for Ireland. 10
points, top of the table after 2 rounds.
Yeah, you would have taken that, particularly as this was kind of billed as a potential banana skin. And look, Scotland have caused Ireland problems. I think back to the game in Dublin last year when Ireland were going for the title, but they were just so far off. And I think it is worth pointing out the double change that they had to make really impacted. I don't think it was the deciding factor of the game, because I think even when Darcy Graham and Finn Russell had that awful clash, you would really hope that Darcy Graham is okay. Like, it was just an awful incident. But look, that clearly impacted their backline. They went for a 6-2 split on the bench, so they were really stretched. But even up to that point, I actually thought it started off the very opening scrum that Ireland had. The scrum was outstanding. I know you touched on the pack, but like Finlay Beelam's performance 2 weeks in a row, and I think it's worth highlighting, because you know, like he's had to fill in for Tadhg Furlong a lot now over the last couple of years, given Furlong's record, but he does it with the minimum of fuss. Like, he is a seriously reliable player. I thought he was outstanding, won a really good breakdown as well, but the scrum really gave the platform for Ireland, and the move that they just carved the Scottish defence open off that scrum, I thought was maybe just a snapshot of the whole game. And from there, like, every time Caelan Doris got on the ball, I thought for me he was probably the man of the match. I know Sam Prendergast got it, it's given by the Scottish crowd as well, which was interesting. But I thought Doris set the tone. I thought himself and Tadhg Byrne up front really epitomised the difference, and we spoke about it, Sinead and Rod, yesterday when we were here for the captain's run. The difference between the two packs is stark, and I think Ireland really doubled down on that. Andy Farrell was here in the crowd watching, obviously his Lions boss. I don't think too many of those Scottish players would have enhanced their credentials for that. Hugh Jones was pretty good. I didn't see much of Rory Darge, so it was a very confident display that I thought the tone was set from early on. Caelan Doris talked about the importance of making a fast start, and they got that, but they had to oversee a tricky period as well. I mean, 17-0 up.
It was a chaotic.
It was mad, because obviously Ireland.
We are recording this in Murrayfield Stadium, in case you're not watching it on the video.
Yeah. So this is the glamour you get from the behind the scenes. But amidst that chaos, Sinead, you're right, it was like a 10-minute period where Tadhg Byrne, I think it must have been his gum shield pinged, and he came off for a HIA. Ryan Baird came on, and then he had to go off for a HIA. And all of a sudden you were kind of thinking, wow, this is a bit like 2 years ago, because Jack Conan came on. I'm not actually sure who was playing in the second row, whether it was Conan or O'Mahony, and then we had the Scottish players clashing heads. But to go 17-0 in front, you were kind of like, certainly I was thinking that Ireland could put a record score up on Scotland. I really thought it was there, and they made a complete mess of their game management on the stroke of half time. I understand why Caelan Norris was carrying off the back of the scrum, because there was still time left on the clock to run it down, but just in terms of like their work rate around the breakdown there, it gifted Scotland a way back into the game. And then Blair Kinghorn scores 2 handy penalties from in front of the post, and all of a sudden they're back to 17-11. But again, like, I think they got a good impact from the bench. I thought Jack Conan this week was the pick of the bunch. He was outstanding again, and their quality just hold in the end.
Yeah, like, I think Ireland would be annoyed if they weren't further than 17 points up at that point. Well, they were held up twice over the line. Yeah. They had, obviously, the Calvin Nash yellow card. If that ball had bounced differently, that could have been a penalty try. Obviously, the ball bounced out, so that's why they just went for the yellow card. Sorry, Calvin Nash wasn't the yellow card. Van der Merwe was yellow carded for impeding Calvin Nash. But that, was potentially a try-scoring moment. They let that slip. They had a couple of line-outs that went astray at pivotal moments. During that period where, we'll say, Jack Conan was playing the second row, they went for a maul and didn't get out. Like, they ran aground with that maul, and you're like, well, what are you doing mauling the ball when you're missing your second, one of your second rows? You're down a man. You kind of maybe play to the strengths of the team, but it's hard to adapt. It's a very unusual situation, and they probably wouldn't have planned for that at all. But at the same time, they were sensible in taking the 3 points at 7-0 when it presented itself. They only won that yellow card period 3-0.
And just about, they got it just before.
Yeah, but I think that was a good decision just to give them that bit of separation. And when the Scots got back on top, and in that 10 minutes after half time, when they got back to 17-11 from 17-0, and you kind of were flashing back to the European Cup final when La Rochelle came from 17-0 down, they weathered that storm and they got to grips with it, and their scrum earned them a penalty advantage for James Lowe to go over. Wasn't it Lowe's chip Gibson Park's chip in behind? It was
Gibson Park was excellent.
He was really excellent,
and he just played in the right areas, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think he took a lot of the weight off Sam Prendergast at times.
I do think the lines factor was in the back of their minds. When we were at the launch a couple of weeks ago, Simon Ishby said, look, as well as the championship, there is another prize for the players, and I think they've tapped into it as motivation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they've listened to all the podcasts and the BBC pundits and UK pundits who've been cheerleading the Scottish backline into the Lions
You're writing
team.
about
And you hear
this for tomorrow.
You have all these, like, the amount of times I've heard that we could have an entire Scottish backline
in the line.
I'm looking at Gary Ringrose, who didn't start today, Aki, Henshaw, Keenan up against Blair Kinghorn. I'm sure in the backs of their minds, with Farrell watching on, they're going, we've beaten these guys 10 in a row, and everyone thinks they're going into the Lions team ahead of us. And really, Andy Farrell, in good conscience, cannot make those 50-50 calls in Scottish favours, because they can't be taken seriously on the back of that record. And then you've got Finn Russell and Sione Tuipulotu up in the stand laughing after Ireland get a bonus point try, which maybe it was gallows humour, but it's not a good look for your team. I just think every Irish player out there really enhanced their Lions credentials. It's going to be a massive Irish accent on this Lions tour, and Farrell was here alongside his wife Colleen watching, and it just cemented, like, they're 2/3 of the way to a Triple Crown, and they only have to beat the worst Wales team in history to get there. How else do you secure your Lions place but performing well in these games against your rivals? Sure, there is going to be a couple, like Hugh Jones is very good. I'm not saying there's no Scottish players going on this tour. Like Tom Curry's definitely going. There's a load of English lads who are playing their way in as well, but there's going to be a very sizable, indeed probably a record Irish contingent, because they've been the most consistently dominant team in this tournament.
What's the record?
For the last
16,
couple of years.
17 is it?
It's up there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
it was a big day in that regard for Tottenham with the Lions, I thought, for Hugo Keenan actually going up against Blair Kinghorn, because I think Kinghorn has been outstanding since he moved to Toulouse. He looks like a completely different player, and he got the better of Hugo Keenan in that Champions Cup final. That was an outstanding performance last season at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So I thought it was quietly an excellent performance from Keenan. Look, Keenan came into the Six Nations, under pressure is probably a bit of a stretch, but like Jamie Osborne hasn't seen a single minute of game time in either of the first two games, and he looks like a guy, in my mind, who could be a bolter for that Lions team. So it'll be interesting to see what Simon Easterby does for that Wales game. Like, not to look too far ahead yet, but I think there's definitely a bit of a balance, I think, to be struck in terms of, obviously keeping the foot in the throat here and keeping the momentum up, but I think he will look to maybe give a couple of guys game time as well, and not just for the sake of it. I'm talking about potentially like guys like Jamie Osborne, who's been brilliant for Leinster all season, but it's just been very unlucky that I suppose the guys in his position are playing very well. You
mentioned obviously Sam Prendergast earlier. He got man of the match. I think what was notable today was, okay, we saw some of those opening day nerves last weekend, but how quickly he can acclimatise to test level and how he did there today.
Yeah, like, it wasn't perfect. I think Michael Sadlian on our website gave him 8 out of 10. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
I think man of the match, there was a couple of forwards who would have earned that a bit more in terms of Caelan Doris. Andrew Porter's sister was on to me actually saying the Pops never get man in a match, as I nearly.
And they never get awards either.
They never get any awards.
That's why I single out Finley Bealham, and Porter was excellent
Porter
as well,
was really good.
They set the tone, didn't they?
And
really
like the platform that he had. And England, in fairness, disrupted Ireland very well in that first half, which would have fed into the kind of mistakes that he made in the first half. But on the whole, for a 21-year-old playing his first Ireland game away from the Aviva Stadium, it was a very impressive display. Some of his decision-making was superb. He looked mature, he looked composed, he looked confident. He had a hand in a number of the tries. He almost threw a beautiful offload to James Lowe in the build-up to Caelan Doris's try, but thought better of it and recycled the ball after his little kind of half break down the left, and Doris forces his way over. Ronan O'Gara called him the master of control at half-time. He was himself and Martin Johnson were effusive in the BBC coverage afterwards as well. There was defensive moments in the last 10 minutes that he won't want to see again.
Yeah,
Jack
and the
Crowley
last
came
try
on.
as well.
I think it's telling. They gave him 80 minutes at 10 and they brought Crowley on at 15, and we never really got to see that double pivot in action, but I do think there's potential there if they can get them the ball. But really Ireland didn't have the ball in the last 10-15 minutes. But on the whole, I think he justified Simon Easterby's selection, and he looks every inch an international 10 to me, with lots of. O'Gara actually said, if he's like this at 21, imagine what he's going to be like at 25, 26, and the potential for him to grow from here is so exciting for Irish rugby. But he's doing it in a team full of leaders and experience and a winning mentality, which is what Scotland are missing. This team is built to win, and it's just a relentless machine. And after a dip in November, it looks like it's right back at the level that it's been at.
There was a good moment in the early on in the first half. I don't know if the TV cameras picked it up. We'll have to watch it back and see. But look, Scotland had clearly targeted Sam Prendergast, as every opposition team does for a 10, but particularly when it's a young 10 making his first start away from home. And the Scotland hooker Dave Cherry kind of, not a late tackle, but certainly left a bit of a shoulder in on him, and James Ryan came from nowhere and absolutely hauled Cherry out of the way. And it kind of reminded me back of the first test in South Africa, when Andy Farrell was really disappointed that the Ireland players kind of, didn't really back each other up, and it was just a small little snapshot. I don't know if it picked up on the TV, but it just spoke volumes, I think, for Ireland's refusal to take a backward step. They were obviously going to be protecting their young 10 as well. So I thought he did very, very well. It's just worth remembering that he's 21. I know he's turning 22 very soon, but for a 21-year-old to be coming into the Six Nations champions and looking pretty at home. Look, he's not the finished article yet. How could he be at 21? I think a couple of his kicks, again, a little bit loose, and like the tackling in the last 10 minutes, but it's his time that he looks like that he has in the ball. And that's the reason why I mentioned the Dave Cherry incident, because Scotland were coming flying off the line at him. He is very happy to take the hits that are coming. He never seems to go down for treatment, which I touched on this in the England game, after the England game last weekend, that I just think that that's such a positive message to send out there. I'm not going to take a backward step just as the pack. And it just is his ability to just fizz passes. I know they were playing off advantage, and I actually think it's coming to me now, but I think Ireland scored all 4 of their tries off penalty advantage, which is really encouraging, because a lot of times when teams get advantage in the red zone, they do mad things like trying a kick that's not on, but Ireland were so clinical, and Prendergast was central to that. Look, the pass he threw for Calvin Nash's try was excellent. I thought Nash fitted in really nicely as well, as we expected. Would have had that second try but for Van der Merwe's intervention. And I'd say you'd be disappointed he came off. He didn't see a huge amount of ball, but he was very good in the air. He worked his socks off, but obviously he came off, and Hugo Keenan went to the wing, which is interesting. I doubt Jack Crowley would be overly enthused with the idea of getting a cameo at fullback, because I think realistically, if Hugo Keenan was out injured, I think you're going to be seeing someone like Jamie Osborne. I think if Crowley wants to, force the issue on Prendergast, he would have much rather be getting the 20 minutes or whatever it was at 10.
I do think that, but if you're thinking bench strategy and you say you're chasing a game, the best Ireland attacked in November is when they had Prendergast and Froley on the pitch together. It was against Fiji, they were tiring, there are caveats. But I think the idea of getting Crowley in either at 12 or 15 and coming in and them working together, offering a second,
would he better 12 though, do you think?
Potentially. I think he's very good. I think he's a decent fullback. I think he's well able to do it. He's athletic.
He's a super footballer, really.
So I think long term, yes, I agree with you. And I think having come on, he would have liked a bit of ball. He didn't get any ball. They didn't really attack while he was on, so they never really got to see them work in tandem. So it was a bit of a wasted opportunity in that regard. But I do believe that there's potential there for Ireland, and no harm for him to get 20 minutes in that position, because he may, like, if Keenan goes down against Wales or France, that's probably the substitution they're going to make. So you have to try it and give him a chance to do it at international level. But it didn't really break his way, and you're right, like, he wants to play 10 for Ireland, and he's having to deal with it.
And I do like that Ireland are thinking outside the box in terms of trying different things, and that probably summed up how comfortable they were here today. And I believe it was Andrew Goodman's idea to try that out here today, which is very interesting, because it fits into the whole, Simon Easterby has made it clear that he's now running the attack, as in Andrew Goodman is now that Andy Farrell is away. So you're starting to see more and more different layers being added to this Irish attack. And look, I think it's great that they're thinking outside the box, but I suppose I'm playing devil's advocate. If I was in Jack Crowley's shoes, I'd much rather be getting those 20 minutes at 10.
Yeah, and any one of those 4 tries stand out for you? Obviously, second week in a row, as we mentioned, that Ireland have got the bonus point for scoring 4 tries. I was glad to see James Lowe get over the line after his 3 assists last weekend.
The way they started the game in attack really is what sticks with me. The accuracy and the flow is something we saw a bit of it against England, but in England it was almost like they were cutting them in the first phase and they were kind of flowing through, whereas this was a well constructed attack, and they didn't score off the first version of it, but I think there were there was waves upon waves, and Scotland were giving up penalties on their own 5 metre line and kind of getting away. I thought there could have been a yellow card in the first attack.
It's one of my biggest gripes in rugby, and I said it to you at the time, sorry to interrupt you, that when a team scores a try, but like if they don't score the try, it's going to be a yellow card, and they might possibly score a try then. It wrecks my head that the referee doesn't go back and sin bin at Scotland player. It shouldn't matter that Ireland scored the try. They had conceded 3 unbelievably cynical penalties close to their own line, and they get away with 7 points, and I'd say they were happy enough with that, rather than having, because like I said, if Ireland hadn't scored and they went back, there's no saying Ireland would have scored a minute later, and then they'd have the man advantage. So sorry to interrupt you, but that's my biggest gripe in rugby.
I think he would have been justified. I think it was actually 2 penalties and 2 advantages, and I think if you concede a penalty while on penalty advantage, that should be an automatic yellow card. So they put Scotland into this position where they were pinned on their own 5 metre line, and they were really accurate in some of what they delivered, and it led to Calvin Nash's try. Like being able to the fact that they were on penalty advantage, like a couple of times, once it was off a scrum, maybe twice it was off scrum penalty advantage. The fact that the scrum was so dominant is really encouraging in Furlong's absence. And last
McCarthy's
try,
as well, Joe McCarthy's absence, who adds a lot of
the whole right side of the scrum.
And
then the one where Gibson Park, the 4th try where Gibson Park identified the fact that there was no one in the Scottish backfield. The Scots, maybe it's because they had a scrum half on the wing, but they completely abandoned the backfield, and Gibson Park just looked up, dots it over the top. Keenan,
it was Keenan
claims it.
Potential penalty try there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just like a smart. There's such a smart, experienced rugby team making good decisions at pivotal moments. I guess the third try is probably the one that we should probably pinpoint, though, because that was when the Scots had come back and they grasped the game back off them. And I love when a team seizes momentum mid-game, because they would have come out looking to put the Scots to bed in the first 10 minutes after half-time, and they didn't. Their discipline wasn't great. Their they conceded the 2 penalties that allowed them to narrow the gap. But Prendergast actually was just down the mix zone. He was saying, I was really really pleased with our defence in that period, that we were giving them 3s and not 7s. Maybe if we're giving out about Ireland, Scotland cynically coughing up penalties, Ireland probably did it as well and got away with it. So that's something that the referee would can reflect on. But the overall, their character in wresting control back of the game and not allowing the Scots to build that momentum was very impressive.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought, like I already mentioned, Caelan Darris, I thought he should have got man of the match, but his carries off, particularly off the goal line dropouts, the ground he makes up, and like what he puts his body through, and he goes 80 minutes week on week. I think he has the lines number 8 are absolutely nailed on. Probably going to be captain as well. I thought he's really grown into the captaincy as a leader. He admitted himself that he had a few struggles early on. Of course, it's a big role, but what I really like is he's got a very calm demeanour with the refs, but it's not impacting his performances, because I think that's something maybe James Ryan possibly suffered with when he had the extra responsibility, because I thought James Ryan was another one who had a really good game. It was such a pity that they conceded the try before half time, because there were 2 huge moments in the space of 3 or 4 minutes, I think it was. Sorry, I'm pointing here now, but Peter O'Mahony makes a trademark Peter O'Mahony turnover to relieve huge pressure. Scotland, a couple of minutes later, go into the corner, and James Ryan wins at unbelievable line.
That's right.
Real risk or reward stuff, because if Ryan doesn't pinch that, then all of a sudden the Irish maul isn't going to be set, and they're possibly looking at a try. So to have come up with those 2 huge defensive moments, I was thinking that's a real sign, kind of the cliche championship minutes, before half time, but actually they went and did the complete opposite, because not only did they concede the try, but they conceded 6 points after it as well. well. So I think in the cold light of day, they'll probably be happy, like, because no one is coming away from this. Like I said, I thought they could have put a record score on Scotland here today, but the fact they didn't, we've just come from Simon Easterby and Caelan Doris's press conference. They're keeping their feet firmly on the ground, even though the championship is now in their own hands.
They booed O'Mahony off.
They did.
It's hilarious. And it's
I'd say he was loving that.
Absolutely, he would be. But I think it's almost like I thought there was a bit of a changing of the guard today, in that O'Mahony's been the nightmare, the tormentor in chief of Scotland over the years, and they're finally seeing him off. Like, that could be his last game in Murrayfield. It could be his last Six Nations game in Scotland. We don't know what he's going to do. But they've got Doris. Like, Doris is now just like Lord, winning every collision. He's so dominant. He's just a better player than anything Scotland have. And it's like, you've seen off O'Mahony, and it's this 26-year-old captain, and he, a dominant figure in the game. And he wasn't alone. There was just so many the Irish forwards, whatever it is, they see that blue jersey and they just go to work, and it brings out the best in them so often.
But even when he came off O'Mahony, like, he was still warming up afterwards with Ryan Baird before he came on. Like, justified his decision. Simon Easterby in those changes he made.
Yeah, he certainly didn't let Ireland down. He made a couple of really good tackles. He dropped.
There's a line out that
won't
time.
Be playing in the Super Bowl tonight. The ball went over his shoulder. He wasn't able to take it. He won't make a wide receiver yet. But I thought he was solid, and he played well without really being outstanding, but he definitely contributed to the game. And I'm sure when you watch the tape back off and you pick up these little moments, so, like Van der Fleer, I thought was just massively industrious. You could just list them all off.
Yeah.
He definitely didn't.
He was very good around the breakdown, I thought, because Ireland had a very good platform to play off in Gibson Park. With really quick service.
So his rubbish bin was dropping from the sky.
Is that quality of the podcast? It's like
I'm right underneath.
But yeah,
I remember one tackle. I think one of the Scottish back three he nailed in open field, which was a really important piece of, back when the game was in the balance. So I don't think he justified the selection.
Yeah.
It worked out well for Ireland.
I think the big question is, in regard to that number 6 position, is how long more do you keep Jack Conan on the bench? Because this is 2 weeks in a row now.
Today.
It's a bit like we were talking about Crowley after the England game last week, that he's kind of become so good off the bench that you're kind of like, oh, well, I can kind of keep him there. But his form since he's come back from injury has been excellent for Leinster, and he's delivered 2 excellent performances for Ireland.
Sorry, they are bags
bag
full of cans and
there's no way to go. I don't want to kill away a bag of cans.
I'm safe under here. But I just think he's offering so much in a position that's very much up for grabs. No one has taken hold of that number 6 jersey. And look, there was times where Ireland and Leinster were trying to fit Caelan Doris and Jack Conan into the same back. Yeah, and Doris was moving. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. But Jack Conan has played 6 very, very comfortably. And look, the two of them would tell you that their roles are pretty interchangeable, particularly like in phases, that they're well able to adjust. But I just think Conan is playing so well at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the ones who comes into the team for Wales.
So let's talk about Scotland. So 11th successive defeat to Ireland. I said to you after the playing of Flower of Scotland that I didn't feel like it was sang with the same gusto that you might have heard before. And I did I was chatting to a few Scotland fans before, and they were still so incredibly confident. Well, one woman said to me, win or lose, we booze anyway. So I mean, I hope she still had
evidence by the bags of cans falling from the sky.
But oh man, that is...
Well, like, it was a massive underperformance, because you can imagine they'd been building up to this one. The Italy game, they knew they were probably going to beat. I know they lost Italy last year, but they were probably going to beat Italy in round 1, and really their whole championship hinges on this game. They go to Twickenham next. It must be just it should be a source of, like, it should injure their pride that they haven't beaten this opposition in so long. It should be their modus operandi, the single driving factor in their rugby career now should be to beat Ireland. Like, how there's lads who are going to retire having never beaten Ireland once. It just must. Obviously, Ireland, to quote Zombie, they're in their heads to a large degree, and their mistakes in the first half. Even Ireland were applying maximum pressure, but there was like their backline is usually very slick and very good. Drop balls. 2-3 charge downs that didn't really lead to anything for Ireland, but Ireland were applying maximum pressure, but also they were making the wrong decisions under that pressure. Their scrum was poor, their pack was out muscled. It was a really difficult day at the office all around, and even when they got the momentum in the game and they started getting on top of Ireland, they couldn't make it count. Like, Ireland must have had some doubts at 17-11. They were coughing up penalty, they were backing up penalty after penalty. To go back to the selection thing, I wouldn't be leaving Ringrose out anytime soon again. I do think Ireland missed him in defence, but Scotland weren't necessarily able to exploit that. The disruption has to be, like, Keane's right to flag it. Like, the disruption in the back line is a massive issue. They picked a 6-2 and they lost 2 backs in one go. That is difficult, but really they they got it at home be better than they were. They contributed to their own downfall today. Ireland were the better team. I think they are a better team in general.
Yeah.
But you got to perform. And Scotland didn't perform today. It's so, for Gregor Townsend, I just wonder how he goes in this week and tries to lift that team. Like, yeah, I mean, yes, they might go and beat England again, but what does it matter?
The camera panned him in the coach's box about 10 minutes from the end, and he just had a haunted look on his face in terms of like maybe saying, here we go again. But like Glasgow won the URC last season and did it the hard way like Munster did by going to South Africa. So like they do have a winning mentality.
I feel the backdrops are getting closer.
Within the squad. But to me, lads, it all comes back to the packs. Like that pack is just not. It's nowhere near, in my opinion, as good as Ireland's. And I've been saying this all week, even allowing for the fact that Ireland are missing a couple of guys as well. And I just don't. I think if you don't have the pack to go toe to toe with Ireland,
they'll show up at Twickenham. Like they'll turn up at Twickenham and they'll be a different team because they have this ability. Like Ireland used to be out, like when they were a really inconsistent side. They will man up.
But Ireland's pack is also better than England's, is what I mean.
True,
and they showed that last week too. I think
like,
this is a really cohesive, strong Irish pack with the bench impact, and I just don't think Scotland have the quality. Even when you looked at that bench, like obviously, look, that was probably, we were talking about this before the match, that's probably the strongest bench that Ireland have ever been able to name. And then you look at the Scotland bench even before the game, and the quality of guys that were coming off it, it's just not, in my opinion anyway, on the same level. And I think that told in the end. And we can talk about, the record and all that, but to me, it's not really surprising when they just don't have the cattle to go up against that Irish pack.
I don't know. I think emotion can be a great leveller if you channel it the right way. And the Scots shouldn't be shy of them. I just keep going back to that moment in the stand where they're laughing and joking after conceding the fourth try. Maybe that's deeply unfair. Maybe there was something was said, or maybe I don't know. But it just spoke to me of a team that you can't take seriously as Six Nations contenders. Even though every year we hear from that they're going, this is going to be their year. Not necessarily from them. I wouldn't, especially not this year. They didn't say much, but they have. Like they've been gotten to a certain level and they've just plateaued at that level for the last couple of years. And like the fact that Glasgow, like the players out there who did have a great season last year, who have had big results and big wins over opposition that are maybe not on par with Ireland, but not far off Ireland. They ran South Africa close here in November. I know November, but they weren't good today. Scotland, they weren't at their own level. And to not turn up at your own level against a team that's beaten you 10 times in a row, I think will really annoy Gregor Townsend and will annoy. But you could hear the fans were very close to the crowd in the press box, and it was a very frustrated home crowd. And the
guy who stormed out with about 10 or 15 minutes left, like, geez, he was not happy.
Well, one guy at one stage just roared, "Do you know how much these tickets are?" And that was in the opening quarter, like, that was,
and
so
another fella cracked his head off the back
he
of
did,
the,
God
the
love
desk.
in frustration.
I
don't think he was.
But you're right in what you're saying, because Hugh Jones said it immediately after they beat Italy last week, that Ireland is the one that they want. So like their whole campaign, I know it's only the second game in, but has been building towards getting Ireland at home. No Andy Farrell in the coaching box, they had a little bit of a dip. 21-year-old 10, a little bit of a dip in November. It's kind of like now or never, and to be honest, it looks like it's going to be a while before they beat them.
Okay, I'm going to have to get you out of here for health and safety reasons in the next few minutes.
HIAs all around.
So, lads, what a position. I mean, round two, it could not have gone much better for Simon Easterby. Hopefully as well, like Tyke Furlong and Joe McCarthy will be back. There doesn't seem to be any major. Matt Canson was there on the pitch, with the
fully
squad
loaded
as well,
which is good to see.
Yeah.
No comment on that. But like he's must be very happy with how those rounds have gone so far.
Matt Hansen. I don't think Matt Hansen will be happy watching Calvin Nash do so well today, but I think Ireland are in an incredible. I've looked at this from the outset, and I looked at the schedule, and I always thought there was a slam there for Ireland if they turned up and they played like they did last year or the year before, and if they maintained consistent levels way above what they did produce in November. Because with Wales being such a diminished force, the years where Ireland have France and England at home, they should be aim for slams every 2 years at least, because like you should win here, because you always win here. They can't lose in Cardiff. That's a gimme. And Rome is going to be difficult because Italy are a much more competitive team now, but it's still a team that you should be beating. That'll be a challenge, because if they win the other games, or even if they lose to France and they're trying to bounce back for a championship like we saw last year, they tighten up when the finish line is in sight. But you now have a 4-week window to build towards France with a nice warm-up over in Cardiff. Get a bit of confidence into some players. Maybe do a bit of rotation. Maybe you start Jack early. It's tricky because of the length of the build-up. Like, do you want to break up the rhythm of the team? Do you want to break up the rhythm of Prendergast playing with these players? That's they're going to have to balance that. My sense is they probably will play Crowley, Conan, probably get Cian a start. I'm sure there's, Jamie Osborne, I'd say, will be in the 23. They might, they've been resting Bundyaki during the season. I'll definitely ring us back in. So there's definitely scope to make some changes and win, because this Welsh team is at the lowest ebb, and you can't ever turn up and expect to just turn up and win, but this Irish team generally performs as well, and they're chasing a bit of a points difference as well, because France put a big score on Wales, and you'd expect everyone else to, if they end up in a points battle with England.
Yeah.
So there's things they need. They will set goals for themselves. So they're in an incredibly good position to march into that France game and perform. And France, you just don't know what's going to show up because of what happened yesterday. Now, I think they'll be better than they were yesterday, but it's an incredible position. They should be winning the championship from here. They should be winning the Grand Slam from here, based on the schedule and the way they're playing. But obviously, we know from last year that you can't. You have to actually go and do it, because last year Ireland were in the same position and they went to Twickenham and slipped up.
Yeah, March 8th, France in Dublin. Very hard to imagine France being as poor as they were against England. But then again, momentum is firmly behind Ireland, and we've spoken about that so often, about how important momentum is. They're now the only team left standing with an unbeaten record. Simon Easterby just said there in his press conference that they're well aware of what's at stake in terms of the history, and you touched it at the very top of the show, Sinead, that to become the first team to win 3 titles in a row would set them apart from any other team. But if they were to go and do it by winning a Grand Slam, wow, what a way to put the cherry on top. So without getting too far ahead of ourselves, but that's a reality, that the history is there, with the unbelievable bonus of winning a Grand Slam, because the way they're going now, they're trending in the right direction. Because I actually think there's another couple of gears left in this Ireland team. They haven't delivered anything like a complete 80-minute performance. I know they're few and far between, but they'll be really annoyed about how they left England in for those 2 soft tries at the end of the match last weekend, and they'll be really disappointed about how they mismanaged that period 4.5 after half time today. So what a position to be in, to feel like you still have so much scope for improvement with 10 out of 10 points to your name.
And the line out is back being a little bit of an issue again, because England gave them the line out last week.
They did.
It was important last week not to get carried away with
false
that,
sense
with
of
that
security,
record. Today, one or two of the losses may have come when their line-out caller was off getting a HIA. That has to be taken into account. But it didn't look as secure, and maybe that's a case for Baird to come back in, because with 3 out-and-out jumpers, I know Manny's a very good jumper, maybe that was a bit of security that they can get. But their defensive line-out was good, but that's one area they can definitely work on. And their discipline, there was a couple of penalties just before half-time that put them in that position that were very sloppy. I think Bundyaki gave away 2. That's something they can cut out. But they're tweaking at the edges of a very strong performance, and they're in a really, really good position.
Yeah, they sure are. You've got a flight to catch?
I do.
Okay, Rory and Cian, thank you very much for that. Well, there'll be more rugby chat with Joe Malloy on Indo Sport and with Will and Luke on the left wing. But that's it from us. Thanks for tuning in.